A lot of people ask me the question, which is better, Artrage or Procreate? Let's find out. I want to begin by saying that the Artrage version that I'm using is for the iPad. It is not the PC version. The PC version is way more powerful than the iPad version. So I want to get that out of the way first. Both these apps are available for the iPad. So we're talking about Procreate and Artrage for the iPad. So the first thing then is setting up the page size, and with Procreate I can create pages that are 36 inches by 24 inch by 300 dpi. In this instance I've actually created a page 24 inch by 16 by 300 dots per inch. In Artrage there is a restriction that I impose on myself, and that is because you cannot create a brush size over 100% in Procreate, so in Artrage. So if you make the page too big, you're working with a really tiny paintbrush. So the optimum size for me is 300 dpi by 4096 dpi, which is way smaller than the 24 by 16 inches. So that's the first difference between the two. You can go way bigger in Procreate than you can in Artrage, although if you go too big you are restricting the number of layers you can use. So if you have a 36 by 24 inch image in Procreate, you can only use 4 layers. That's why I work at 24 by 16. I can get way more layers. The second huge difference for me is the types of brushes that you get. In Procreate you get a vast variety of brushes, really some very funky brushes, and they are really flexible. Artrage, and also in Procreate you can make your own brushes. You can customize your own and create as many brushes as you want, and I've done that, and I've got loads of free watercolor brushes available and so on. In Artrage you can't customize the brushes at all, and you are restricted to brushes that are like traditional media, like for example watercolor brushes, oil paint brushes, pastels and pencils, that kind of thing. So you haven't got the variety of brushes in Artrage that you have in Procreate. So far everything looks as though we're leaning towards Procreate being the app, but Artrage has one trick up its sleeve really, and that is their thick paintbrushes. They have the most awesome simulator of thick paint where you can use tubes of paint, thick paint oil on brushes and palette knives. So for this demo I am using in Procreate, I'm using a brush that you cannot emulate in Artrage at all. So it's unique to Procreate. It's called the Nico Rule Brush, and in Artrage I'm using 3 oil tools. I'm using the thick oil paintbrush, I'm using the hard out smudge palette knife, and I'm using tubes of paint, and that's it. So on the 2 paintings you see, the Artrage is using the oil paints, and Procreate on the left I'm just using this Nico Rule Brush. And I have to say the only scientific bit about this painting is the fact that both of the paintings took 30 minutes, within about 30 seconds of each other. So I kept the time span to do the painting the same. Apart from that, there is no other measure that I've used at all. I would say performance wise Procreate has the edge. The brush strokes seem to be a little bit quicker and slicker and smoother, but that is it. It was really interesting to do these two paintings. I painted the Procreate one first. I used the image that I'm using. I'll put that on. I'll make sure that you can see that on the screen. The image that I'm using for a source, I put on a different PC, so I didn't split the screen or anything like that. I know there's lots of features in Artrage where you can use a reference image. I very rarely use that because I feel that the image is too blurred and I can't get it big enough. So I don't very often use the reference feature in the Artrage app. And I usually split the screen in Procreate and Artrage. So and put the source image on the left of the screen and then the app on the right. So I work the same way in both of those. I've done maybe 50, well no I haven't, I've done 80 paintings in Procreate, and all the videos are there for you to see, and I've done I think it was 40 something, maybe 40 in Artrage on the iPad. It might be less than that, but a lot less in the Artrage app than Procreate. But to be honest, I did a lot of Procreate before I started using Artrage, and it was when I discovered the oil brush in Artrage that I started to use the app. I have to say this again, I want to say this isn't the PC version. That the PC version is a very different beast and way more powerful. So you wouldn't be able to compare them at all. So Procreate, I can make much bigger canvases. I can crop the image, which is a fairly new feature in Procreate. I can do that in Artrage as well. I can save a recorded image in Procreate, or record the video as I'm going. I can't do that in Artrage, but I can record a script, and that script I can then run on the PC version and scale the painting up, and I've done that before, but you can't record. So I prefer that in Procreate, because if I'm recording, I mean, this isn't really relevant unless you're recording your paintings, but I use the built-in recording feature within the iPad to record the videos. But if that fails, I know I've got a backup in Procreate, because I've always got the record feature switched on, so I can just go to that and use that. You haven't got that in Artrage. So when I'm using Artrage to do a painting, it's always a bit hit and miss. If the Apple iPad recording feature fails, then I've lost the video and I haven't got it. So they are the main features. I would say that if I was going, which is the best, Procreate or Artrage? That is the question. Which one of these two apps would I use? Well, I'll tell you, I would use, if I was just doing a sketch, I'd use Procreate. If I was doing a watercolor, I would use Procreate, because I've spent a lot of time creating a lot of watercolor brushes to produce watercolor paintings. Now, if I was just going to use the default brushes, I may use Artrage, but Procreate has got this feature where you can create your own brushes. So I've done that, and I would always use Procreate for a watercolor painting. Which would I use for pastels if I was doing a pastel? And this is all about traditional art, really. I'm not talking about people that are doing different styles, maybe for animation or cartoon work, or computer graphic type imagery and computer game imagery. I would say hands down every time you would use Procreate. You wouldn't go near Artrage. But for traditional artists I'm talking about, or that people that want to get a look that looks like a painting, which would I use for pastels? I would use Procreate. I just feel that their brushes are just way better, and they look way more realistic than Artrage. So pencil sketch, Procreate. I've said, why why would I even look at Artrage? As I said right at the beginning, Artrage cannot be beaten for its oil paint, for its thick paint with the tubes of paint, the thick oil brushes, and all of those features. Procreate, just, you know, it hasn't got that in it. So the answer is we have got two very, very different apps here. One is brilliant for one thing, and the other, Artrage, is brilliant. Well, let's say Procreate is brilliant for doing imagery that you have a lot of flexibility with. You can get really creative with your brushes. You can do some really cool stuff. Artrage is very much more restricted, and you really are sort of forced down the path of doing traditional looking art, but that oil paint is friggin' awesome. So my answer is you need both apps. You need Procreate in your app collection, and you need Artrage if you want to do thick oil paint. Obviously, if you don't, then I would choose Procreate. But if you want thick oil paint, then you need Artrage. So that kind of covers everything that I wanted to talk about the two apps. It is looking at it from a very personal point of view, and obviously I've not done a sort of point by point comparison of every single feature, just the ones that really interest me as a traditional artist. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, big thumbs up as always is much appreciated, and if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, because I've got lots of videos like this and I would love to be sharing them with you. So hopefully I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.